Watch your step in the best wall streets because there are some potholes and some bumps that we are going to help you smooth out coming up. Welcome into the Draft Lab. I'm Joel Worth, and this is the IDP Plus Best Ball Podcast. That's right, we've hit the dead zone of the NFL season, of the NFL year. The OTAs are coming to an end. Training camps are still about a month away from starting up. So there's really going to be no news coming out for the next month or so. No good news anyway. The only news that can come out is bad news. Police blotter stuff, off-season injuries or training injuries. We don't want that. So right now is a point in the time where ADPs are probably going to stabilize a little bit in the underdog draft streets. So let's take a look at some that I think are wrong, where the market has these players in the wrong place, and you can get some closing line value. So let's start out with the Joe Burrow debate. So what's going on here is there are two real places where Joe Burrow gets drafted, either at the 4-5 turn for the Jamar Chase drafter to stack, or the Jamar Chase drafter tries to push him around to pick 72. And so sometimes he gets sniped in between, and sometimes he gets all the way to 72. So the question is, should you be taking him at 4-5, at 48, or should you be trying to push him around to the 72 pick? I'm going to tell you that he should probably go even later, and he probably shouldn't even be bothering with Joe Burrow at that 72 pick. And if you're trying to take a dagger for your draft by taking him in between without him being stacked, you're just making a huge mistake. And here's why. If we just look at Joe Burrow in a vacuum, where should he be going? He should probably be going, honestly, he should be going probably in the 90s, where Patrick Mahomes, where Baker Mayfield go. If you think about it, last year, Joe Burrow and Baker Mayfield had the exact same number of underdog points. Joe Burrow had a career high in passing attempts by over 40, had a career high in completions by 45, career high in passing yards by over 300, career high in touchdowns by 8. His previous career high was 35. Last year, he had 43 touchdowns. So just an amazing season, obviously, huge numbers, but it feels unsustainable. That was his best fantasy scoring season by over a dozen points. So is that sustainable? Now, yeah, the Bengals look like a mess, honestly. Their defense is going to be terrible. He's probably going to have to throw a ton again. But I think to expect that level of production is probably unrealistic. So do you really want to be taking him at that 4-5 turn where you can get like a Jalen Hurts or potentially a Jaden Daniels? Probably not getting Jaden Daniels. Usually goes before that, but or you can be getting another receiver. You can be getting another high-end running back. And even if you go at 72, yeah, sure, you're getting the stack, but that doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily a great pick. If you can get a Baker Mayfield who had the exact same number of points as Joe Burrow 30 picks later. So that just doesn't feel like good value. And again, if you're someone who thinks you're taking falling on a sword for the rest of the league by taking Joe Burrow unstacked or is taking him with Chase Brown, brother, you are making a mistake. That is not a good idea. So I don't think Joe Burrow's ADP is 60.5. That never happens, right? That almost never happens. He either goes at 48, 49, or he goes at 72, or he goes somewhere in between, usually not 60. So it's a fairly binary pick choice for Burrow. Again, that 60.5 is not necessarily representative of where he's going to go. He's either going to go at 48 or he's going to go at 70. It's basically an average, which ADP is an average, obviously, but that's not a typical place where he goes. It's just kind of the middle of the range of where he goes. So be careful with Joe Burrow. Honestly, I don't even care about stacking him that much, right? The point of stacking is stacking is good, right? I'm not going to say stacking is a bad thing, but I'm more interested in bringing along my back end picks in my stacks than necessarily stacking my top end guys. Jamar Chase, I expect to be good either way, and I expect Joe Burrow to be fine, but I don't, and then, yeah, there's definitely be correlation there, but I don't necessarily need Joe Burrow if I have Jamar Chase. I expect him to be awesome anyway. And if I'm trying to do the Cardinals Bengals stack, the Week 17 stack, I can get, say, Chase at 1 at the 2-3 turn. I can get McBride and Marvin Harrison, and then I can go Kyler Murray in the 90s or in the early 100s. I don't need Joe Burrow. So I can just do a Cardinal stack and use Jamar Chase as a bring back. So that's totally fine. So I don't want to be going out of my way to stack Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase. So I don't like taking him at 49. I don't like taking him at 72. Honestly, I don't do either one really because I don't get any one picks. End of rant. But so I think taking Joe Burrow at 49 is terrible. I think taking Joe Burrow in between 49 and 72 and thinking that you're saving the league, I think that's terrible as well. I don't even like taking Joe Burrow at 72. So I think he should be pushed. So that's the side of the debate I'm on. I don't want him at 49 or at 72. I say let him slide. Let somebody else take him and get Kyler Murray as a bring back. Get Baker Mayfield 30 picks later, who had just as good a season as Joe Burrow did. All right, let's move on to the Denver running backs. And we're talking about probably the highest riser on the board right now. And one of the hottest players and player I'm looking to get everywhere I can at this ADP, and that's J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins obviously just signed with Denver, and he is rising up the board. Right now his ADP is 139.2. He's RB 43. He is flying up the board. Before he signed, you could get him around 180. Then initially when he signed, you could get him around 150. Now he's all the way up to 140. Honestly, you see him go inside 105. You see him go inside 110. He is all over the map right now, and that ADP is moving up about 5 spots per day. So every time they recalculate ADP, J.K. Dobbins is moving up about 5 spots. So you can't even really assure yourself of getting him if you're waiting even till 135. So you need to move up and get him. I think J.K. Dobbins is a fantastic pick really in any build, honestly. In a 0 RB build, I'm fine with him. I think he's a great RB2. In a hero RB, I think he's a great RB3, even a really good RB2. Because you think back, let's do the Sean Payton comparison. In Alvin Kamara's rookie year, Mark Ingram had 1,500 yards and 12 touchdowns. That's perfectly in play for Dobbins. Remember, last year, coming off the Achilles injury, less than a year removed from the Achilles injury, he put up 1,050 yards from scrimmage and 9 touchdowns. Yeah, a lot of people say, okay, he was bad because he missed the playoffs. Remember, he didn't miss the entire playoffs. He came back in week 17, had like 80 yards rushing and a touchdown. So he wasn't completely useless in the playoffs or the fantasy playoffs. So, and remember, that was, like I said, that was the year after the Achilles injury. He should be fully healthy now. I think this is just a fantastic pick. You've also got RJ Harvey going at around pick 60. He's ADP 59.6, RB20. If he starts to fall at all, I want to get him as well. I do have a pretty good amount of shares of RJ Harvey. But again, this could be certainly very similar to the Kamara Ingram situation with the Saints in 2017. So if RJ Harvey starts to fall, I guess I want to pick him up as well. Right now he's RB20. Zero fear. I think they can both work well together. There's not a lot in this passing offense, right? Outside of Cortland Sutton. So I think there's room for both these guys to work together. Denver's got a great run blocking offensive line. A lot of people don't come to your mind right away among the best run blocking lines because their running backs were so terrible last year that they didn't do anything on the ground. But Javonte Williams is washed. Joel McLaughlin's not anything. He's not going to send anyone's way. Audric Estime was hurt in training camp, didn't really get going his rookie season. So I think that was more a problem with the running backs themselves than the offensive line creating holes and stuff like that. So I think it's a very good run blocking offensive line. I think this is going to be a terrific offense. It's going to be a really good team. The defense is obviously elite. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities to run the ball in Denver. So again, love both these backs. Dobbins at, again, 139.2. Can't get him there. He's moving up. I think he's going to move all the way up into the 110s easily. So he's someone I want to go get. And then RJ Harvey, if that ADP starts to fall at all, I'm going to keep getting him as well. So love both the Denver RBs and love them both at their current price point. Now let's move on to the Pittsburgh running backs. And one running back I like and one running back I want to fade. Another one who's moving up, but I still want to fade. And that is Jalen Warren and, again, Caleb Johnson. Caleb Johnson, ADP of 74.9, RB25. Jalen Warren, ADP of 98.6, is RB32. I'm very high on Caleb Johnson. I do not like Jalen Warren. Here's why. Jalen Warren's moving up. He is inside of pick 100 now. Again, he's moved up just like J.K. Dobbins. He's moving up quite a bit ever since the Aaron Rodgers signing. I think there's the idea out there that, because they signed Aaron Rodgers, and again, we should have known this is coming, right? There was no chance they were going to start the season with Mason Rudolph. Trading for Kirk Cousins was kind of a long shot. So this was always the likely outcome. But I think there's a feeling that because of the way Aaron Rodgers plays, right? He always wants to play from shotgun. He's not mobile. That Pittsburgh was going to want to, give more snaps to the guy who'd been in the system, who was kind of the previous passing down back, and that's Jalen Warren. And that makes sense, but Jalen Warren's a terrible pass blocking running back. Look at his PFF grades. He had like a 25 PFF pass block grade. Now, PFF grades, obviously, take them with a grain of salt. But when you're that bad, when your grade is that bad, you are not good at what you're trying to do. So I don't think that's necessarily the way this is going to play out. And Caleb Johnson, I think there's this perception that, because he played at Iowa, a very high, didn't play a lot in the passing game because Iowa didn't throw the ball very much. So there's this feeling in people's heads that maybe Caleb Johnson isn't that good a running back or in the passing game, maybe not that good with shotgun runs. Look at his film. He was terrific in shotgun runs last year. And this kind of surprised me as well. But if you go back and look at his film, he was better in shotgun runs than he was in under center runs. So I think he's a perfect fit for Aaron Rodgers because Rodgers wants to play from shotgun all the time. He does not want to go under center. He doesn't want to turn his back to the defense. So I think Caleb Johnson is just a better fit here. And I don't get the rise for Jalen Warren. If he had kind of stayed the same after the Rodgers signing, I get it. But the Rodgers signing just should not change. It shouldn't change his outlook at all. So I just don't get this rise up to inside of pick 100. Caleb Johnson's fallen a little bit. He's behind Quinshon Judkins now. So that's a fall I want to take advantage of. Again, Caleb Johnson, RB 25. So just outside the top, just outside of the RB2s, 75.9. Want to take advantage of the Caleb Johnson fall, and I want to fade the Jalen Warren rise. All right, let's move on to some wide receivers, and we'll start with Davante Adams, wide receiver 19, pick 31.1 in ADP. Honestly, I think this is way too low for Davante Adams with the Rams now, with Matt Stafford. I think he's going to get a ton of targets. Let's look at his target share in the 11 games with the Jets. 9, 6, 11, 13, 7, 12, 11, 12, 13, 8, 12. Does that sound like a guy who's washed? Does that sound like a guy who's too old? That's 114 targets in 11 games. That's 10 per game. Yeah, granted, that was with his old buddy Aaron Rodgers, but Matt Stafford knows how to get his receivers the ball. And we're talking about a guy who was going, between pick 18, 19, 20 at the end of in EDP last year. He's a year older, but it was a very good year. Once he got out of LA, or Las Vegas. I keep calling the Raiders LA. Once he got out of Vegas, went to the Jets into a better situation. He was producing like elite level Davante Adams numbers. So he is moving up. He used to be going kind of right with Mike Evans at that 3-4 turn around pick 36. He's up about 5 picks or 80 and ADP to 31.1. I think Davante Adams should be closer to the 2-3 turn. He should be up there, with Marvin Harrison, with Trey McBride, with Garrett Wilson. And I love Garrett Wilson, but I think Davante Adams deserves to be right up there. I do think this Rams offense is going to be very good. Obviously, you get 2 elite receivers. You get Kyron Williams. But it's going to be a very narrow target tree, right? That third receiver is not going to get a lot. This offense is going to revolve around those 2 receivers, around Puka Nacua, around Davante Adams. So I love his ability to get targets, and I like Davante Adams quite a bit at ADP 31. Even though it's rising, I still want to take advantage because I think this ADP is only going to get higher. I think he's going to move up to that 2-3 turn eventually. So get him now before the ADP gets too high. Now let's talk about Khalil Shakir. What is the point of Khalil Shakir? I don't know. Now, if you're talking DraftKings, you're talking full PPR, yeah, I get it. But let's play a game of blind stats. All right. Wide receiver 1, 140 targets, 93 receptions, 700 yards, 3 touchdowns. Wide receiver 2, 100 targets, 76 receptions, 821 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Which would you rather have? It's a coin flip, right? Pretty close. Half a dozen points here and there separating those. Player 1 is Wan'Dale Robinson, who has an ADP of 170 and is wide receiver 71. Player 2 is Khalil Shakir with an ADP of 79.1, wide receiver 44. Again, what is the point of Khalil Shakir? He doesn't score touchdowns. Yeah, he's a PPR scam. That's great in full PPR. And half PPR, where you want to get touchdowns, where you want touchdown upside, Khalil Shakir has 7 touchdowns in his career in 3 seasons. It just doesn't make sense when you can get basically the same player almost 100 picks later. It doesn't make sense to take Khalil Shakir there. Earlier this week, I was doing a Superflex draft. I ended up taking Khalil Shakir, literally my first Khalil Shakir share of the season, of this draft season. It was on the kind of a bring back to a Philly stack. I had Jalen Hurts, I had Devonta Smith. Okay, I'll get a Buffalo guy for week 17. And I absolutely hated it, right? Because if I'm just drafting a Buffalo guy for a bring back, I want touchdown upside. I want some guy who can put up 2 touchdowns in that game. So I'd rather have a Ray Davis. I'd rather have a Keon Coleman. I'd rather have a Dalton Kincaid. Honestly, I'd probably rather have Josh Palmer. If that's what I'm looking for, if I'm just looking for a Buffalo bring back for week 17 to an Eagle stack, I'd rather have all those guys over Khalil Shakir. And especially in Superflex, where you only start 2 receivers, how often is Khalil Shakir going to hit your lineup? If he's a guy who scores 4 touchdowns, if that's his ceiling, how often is that guy going to hit your lineup? Not very often. So I think this Khalil Shakir ADP at pushing 80 is just completely unwarranted. He's a guy, like I said, I'm almost completely fading him. I think I have maybe 1 or 2 shares in my entire portfolio. So just these PPR scam receivers, don't like them at all. I've mentioned this before. I don't like them at all on half PPR underdog, and especially when I can get an almost exactly identical player 100 picks later. So fade Khalil Shakir, pick up Wan'Dale Robinson 90 to 100 picks later. Like that much better. Moving on, let's talk about Michael Pittman. ADP of 93.7. Listen, it looks like the Colts, whether Anthony Richardson is healthy or not, they are going to use this as an excuse to start Daniel Jones. Be that as it may, whatever you think of that, it feels like a lock right now that Daniel Jones is going to be the starter for the Colts in week 1. That's good for Michael Pittman, right? Daniel Jones cannot throw the ball more than 20 yards downfield, which is good for Pittman because he's not a deep threat. He's an intermediate kind of guy. Last year he was hurt, had the broken back, disc issue, whatever it was, had a back issue. But remember, 2 years ago, 2023, he had 195 fantasy points. That's pretty good for pick ADP of 93.7. You can get almost 200 fantasy points in a pick inside the 90s or outside the 90s. That's fantastic. So, and I think that ceiling is kind of right back in play with Daniel Jones. I think, assuming Daniel Jones is going to be the starter week 1, and like I said, that seems like a certainty right now, and can play well enough to keep the job. TBD, but I think that's really good for Michael Pittman. There is no certainty. There's probably going to be a point in the season where Daniel Jones it's obvious he's not cutting it as the starter, and they're not going anywhere, and they will try to get Anthony Richardson in there. But I think he's going to start the season. I think he's going to have a decent leash, and I think that's very good for Michael Pittman. And I think he is very underdrafted at ADP of 93.7. All right, moving on. Let's get a tight end in here, and let's talk about Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers. One of my highest drafted players right now. I think this is just this is just a crazy misread by the market. Last year, according to our friends at Player Profiler, he was number 6 in snap share at 85.8% among tight ends. Obviously, that's fantastic. That's what we want. We want volume, right? If we're not drafting an elite tight end, a Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, George Kittle type, we want a ton of volume. And Tucker Kraft had it, number 6 in snap share. Now, you can talk about, let's look at let's take a sneak peek inside the IDP Plus Team Snap tool, and you can see that even before and after Luke Musgrave's injury, Tucker Kraft was still getting a ton of snaps. Before the injury, 96%, 80%, 67%, 86%. After Luke Musgrave came back, 62%, 86%, 95%. In the wild card game, he had 97% snap share. So do or die time, Tucker Kraft was on the field for 97% of the Packers' offensive snaps. So even if Luke Musgrave comes back, it shouldn't affect Tucker Kraft's snap share too much. And he is just an efficiency monster. Again, talking about our friends at Player Profiler, number 2 in yards per target, 10.1. Number 2 in yards per reception, 14.1. Number 2 in yards per route run, 2.64. He is super efficient and he gets a ton of snaps. What more do you want out of your tight end if you're not talking about one of the elite guys? So we get Brock Bowers, you have to take in the first, the Trey McBride, if you take it the 2-3 turn. So if you don't want to spend an early pick on a tight end, what more do you want? And Tucker Kraft's ADP is 133.8. He's going behind Colson Loveland, who I like Colson Loveland, but got a shoulder injury, coming off shoulder surgery, hasn't practiced yet at OTAs, rookie tight end. Tyler Warren, another rookie tight end in a similarly low run heavy, low pass volume offense, going ahead of Tucker Kraft. That just makes no sense. So I think Tucker and David Njoku goes in a similar area, and I think they should both. I think they should both be going ahead of at least Loveland and Warren. Again, rookie production at tight end is really hard to come by. I like both their skill sets, and honestly, Tyler Warren is basically his aspirations to be a good Tucker Kraft, and now you've got a third-year guy who is that good going behind him in ADP. That just makes absolutely no sense. So Tucker Kraft is someone I think is going to move up. And I am all about getting as much Tucker Kraft right now. Now, if you want to get access to this team snap share and all the other awesome tools at IDP Plus, go to IDP Plus right now. Get a subscription for all the tools, all the rankings, all the awesome articles. If you're an IDP, this is a tool, a resource that you cannot be without because your league mates are going to have it. So go to IDP Plus right now, get a subscription, and take advantage of all the awesome stuff that is coming and we have on the site right now. Also, we talked about our friends at Player Profiler. We've got an awesome app going. That's the Fast Draft app. Start drafting faster with Fast Draft. I talk about this quite a bit. Awesome opportunities to draft there. They've got IDP only drafts. They've got rookie only drafts. So much cool stuff going on. Get on their mailing list because almost every Friday they've got special promotions where draft a bunch of teams and you get a bunch of teams free. Can't go wrong. Sign up now with code PLUSJOEL and get a match deposit bonus of up to $50. That's, again, fastdraft.app, or go to Player Profiler and find the links there. All right. One more for you. One more ADP that needs to be fixed, and that is Rachaad White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, not saying Rachaad White is a great player at all. That's why he got replaced by Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving, again, a 2-3 turn kind of pick. But, I mean, Rachaad White has had 9 touchdowns in each of the last 2 years. One with Bucky Irving, one without. So obviously this is a guy who's proven that he can score touchdowns in a high-octane offense, which is Tampa's going to be, right? Bad defense. They play in a defense or a division that's going to have terrible defenses all around. This could be a historically bad. The NFC South could have a historically bad group of defenses. So I think that NFC South games are just going to be absolute shootouts all season long. And it's half PPR. We care about touchdowns. Touchdowns matter. And when you're scoring 9 touchdowns, you're a valuable player. So Rachaad White, ADP of 143. He's RB 46. So not even barely an RB 4. And let's compare. Let's do another comparison. Zach Charbonnet, who I like. Again, no shade to Zach Charbonnet. But he's ADP 114, RB 37. Charbonnet, 42 catches, 909 yards from scrimmage, 9 touchdowns. Compare that to Rachaad White, 51 receptions, 1,006 yards from scrimmage, 9 touchdowns. They're basically identical players. Rachaad White was even a little bit better last year, but Zach Charbonnet goes 30 picks ahead. That doesn't make sense. And that's Charbonnet's ADP is probably correct, but I think Rachaad White is way underpriced. He should be much closer to Charbonnet. He should be up in that 115, 120 range. Yeah, Bucky Irving's a better player, but Rachaad White's a much better pass blocker. Bucky Irving's a terrible pass blocker. Yeah, similar to Jaylen Warren, who we talked about with Pittsburgh. Terrible pass blocker. He's not going to get a ton of pass reps. And I do draft a lot of Sean Tucker. Don't get me wrong, but I think he's much more of a contingent bet if one of those guys gets hurt. So I think Rachaad White, one of the more underpriced players in the league, in the draft pool at ADP 143, RB 46, crazy underpriced, and someone I think who should be moving up and probably will move up as we get closer to the season. That is all for today. It's the end of June. Go to the Fantasy Football Expo right now and get signed up for the Fantasy Football Expo, the best weekend in fantasy. Honestly, if it's the best weekend in fantasy, it's the best weekend of the year. You know this. I know this. Right here, beautiful Canton, Ohio. Coming up August 8th through the 10th. All the parties, all the seminars, all the talks, all the drafting, the Kings Classic. So many awesome drafts. You cannot go wrong. And check out the Fantasy Football Expo podcast with Bob Long, Nate Cheatham. They have every other Tuesday, they have an array of special guests, the best creators in the business. They just had JJ Zacharyson on. Cannot miss stuff. So check that out. And again, go to the fantasyfootballexpo.com. Get your tickets right now before the price goes up. You don't want to be waiting until the very end. The best time to get the tickets is right now. That's it for today. I'm Joel Worth. You can find me on the Twitter and on the Blue Sky at thejoelworth.com. Do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the feed. We got so much cool stuff coming up here at idpplus.com. We've got all the ranking shows are starting. They're coming out. You're going to get your redraft rankings. You're going to get your best ball rankings. You're going to get your dynasty rankings. Everything coming out. Cannot miss it. So subscribe to the feed. Thanks for checking out the show, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.